Hello everyone and welcome to Cappuccino with HR. My name is Rudi Bauer, and after 40 years in business, I'm 100% sure that the success of companies is directly related to the passion of the people working for these companies. With the Cappuccino of HR, we created a format where we really invite people. It's HR leaders, it's recruiters, it's talent acquisition guys, and we're talking about all the different kind of topics. And the range is going from AI, of course, to new work, to leadership, and all the challenges along the way. Good afternoon and welcome to a new episode of Cappuccino with HR. And today my guest is, and I'm really happy to have him here because I think it's a cool partnership in the meantime, and I think it's a friendship. And we met a couple of years ago, the first time in Amsterdam, but we will probably come to that. Adriaan Kolff, he's the CEO and co-founder of Matchr, and as I mentioned, we met at a conference, his conference in Amsterdam. I think this was the first time when we met a couple of years ago. Yeah. And in the meantime, Adriaan and Matchr are the co-hosts of our HR Leader Summit in Berlin at our World Congress, We Developers World Congress. So I'm really happy to have you here. And today we are talking about a really nice topic, which I think is extremely important in today's world. It's leadership. And what does leadership mean to both of us? So welcome, Adriaan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Rudi. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I normally start always with the same question, as it's called Cappuccino with HR. And first question needs to be, Adriaan, what's your favorite coffee?
So my favorite coffee is a black drip coffee from the Highline Hotel. That's 1 block away from my home here in New York, in Chelsea. And in my humble opinion, they serve the best black drip coffee in the world. No milk, no sugar, just black drip coffee.
Really cool. Really cool. And the second thing, what I would quickly ask you, for those 3 people out there in the audience that probably don't know you, could you please briefly introduce yourself in a few sentences?
Yeah. So Adriaan Kolff, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Matchr. And we are an embedded global RPO company whereby my sourcers and recruiters and coordinators work fully embedded into the client teams of companies like TikTok, Booking, Stripe, Revolut, Miro, Grammarly, but also Action and Heineken. We're active in 3 different continents, Europe, the US, and Africa, and are also expanding to the APAC region. And I live with my wife, my stepdaughter, 1 dog, 2 cats, 2 turtles, and a gecko.
Really cool. Thanks for the brief introduction. I think we know now everything about you.
Exactly. Perfect. That's
it. And today we're talking about leadership. And I mean, I think probably a philosophical question, as you already saw in the preparation file. What does leadership mean to you? I mean, I met a lot of good managers in my entire career. So I'm 40 years in business, and I think I met a lot of good managers, but honestly, I just met a handful of good leaders. Do you distinguish between these 2 categories? What does it mean to you?
I mean, those are 2 questions in one, right? The difference between managers and leaders, and what does leadership mean to you? And I think when I was thinking about this question, to me, it boils down to, if you don't follow your dreams, you end up working for the dreams of someone else. And I think that a true leader is able to articulate his or her dream and then enroll others in that dream, and they will follow the leader, for that matter, on that path to creating that dream, whatever that might be. And I think that's also where the distinction is, because the managers are still working on someone else's dream. And to me, that's where the distinction lays. And good leaders are able to articulate that vision and that dream so well that even the most talented people in the world will follow that leader no matter what. And I think, and it's someone, and it sounds almost cliche, but I think I find that so powerful of Elon Musk when he started SpaceX, that he said we need to go to Mars to save humanity. Basically, that is such a bold statement, right? And reading his biography, right? Every meeting they talk about what are we going to wear at Mars, like what rockets do we need to build in order to go to Mars. Even the author was like, "Are these guys insane? Like there's no way that we're going to go to Mars, right?" But if you're able to articulate and be convinced enough of your dream, whatever that might be, others will follow.
Mhm. And what do you think are the biggest challenges in today's environment? Because I mean, we're doing a developer survey every year, and honestly, we find out that this kind of meaning, what job means to people, what's becoming important, what stays important, uh, what is really what are people demanding for is quickly changing. So that means if you want to people to follow you, you probably have to understand their needs and their changing needs as well. How do you see that?
I mean, I think that's always a challenge, right? Like especially in my business, right? My business is all about people. I scale through people. There's no, like, we don't develop our in-house technology. We work with different technology partners, but really our first and foremost, our product is our people, right? So we are constantly checking in with our people's, like, what do you like working about Matchr? Why do you stay? Why would you leave? Right. And one of the things which is interesting that I'm going through now as a leader is that we need to redefine what that dream and what that North Star looks like. Because it has changed over time. When we started the company, it was we're going to make recruitment accessible to everyone. Because our original business model is that we were going to offer remote sources and recruiters for the same price that you would hire your own recruiter in Western Europe or in the US. But over time, that model has changed because we became a fully remote company, and then we realized we're unlocking global talent because opportunity is not equally distributed, but talent is. And we were able to hire people in Armenia, in Ukraine, in Poland, in Nigeria, in Egypt, in Morocco, in South Africa, right? Amazing talent that we, because of our business model, we're then able to connect with companies like TikTok and with Booking and with Stripe. And we were unlocking that global talent. But now what we've seen is that with our clients actually moving more to a hybrid kind of structure again, so away from the fully remote, some of these opportunities are not as abundant as they used to be. And we're now seeing, it's like, okay, so what does that mean for us, right? Like, what does it mean for me? Why do I get up as a leader to work on Matchr? Like, what drives me? And if I'm really honest and really vulnerable with you, Rudi, it is work in progress. And I don't want to throw something on the wall that doesn't resonate. That's just the blah, right? That people are like, seriously, like a statement like we're going to be the best recruitment company of the world. Seriously? Like, what does that mean? What does the best mean? What is, like, if we go down to the root, what does it really mean? And as a leader, and that's why I'm working with my executive coach on this a lot. I need to start with my own why. What are my own dreams? Like, what is it? What is the reason why I get up out of bed in the morning? And it is in the making. It's work in progress. I wish I could have been like, Rudi, this is it, picture frame, and this is where we're heading. But to really get to the core of it, it takes a lot of self reflection and work.
And how much person? I mean, it's a really personal question. You probably do not need to answer it. But what is the current motivation for you to stand up every day in respect to the Matchr work? Has it changed over the time? Was it a different kind of motivations? Is it changing, or is it always the same?
Oh, it has definitely changed, and I'm definitely going to echo and ask the same question back for you, Rudi. What if that has changed for you? But for me, when I started Matchr, there's a little bit of a backstory, right? Um, I left my previous company where I was one of the partners, but I was never one of the founding partners. So I was kind of like as an entrepreneur working on someone else's dream, but especially on someone else's culture. And there were a couple of elements in that culture that weren't my values. And at the time when I left the company, I realized I always had the ambition to start a company. And I realized if I don't do it now, I will never do it. Right? I didn't have kids. I had financial stability that I could, like start something. I was like, okay, let me give this let me give this a shot. And when I started Matchr, I was therefore obsessed of making Matchr a success because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And it was an extreme hunger and drive to do this. The only thing I was doing in the first year and a half, I moved to Kiev where I said open up our first office. I just worked. I worked. And once we got through that first phase, when we were stable and we went through a lot of iterations, right? That's when I was able to take it a little bit of a step. We was like, okay, now what, right? And then I realized standing more on the balcony is like, what an incredible vehicle that I now have people around me that are motivated, that are working, that are doing great things, that are delivering great service to our clients, but especially I'm working with all these amazing people at the time in Ukraine. I'm paying them a great salary. I'm giving them opportunity to work for amazing companies. And I could see the real impact that my company now was making. And it was extremely motivating for me. And it still is to this day. And now if I boil it down, and this is something that I've gone deep in, where my true why is that I love to create shared and unique experience to connect deeply with others. And that's what I love so much about the recruitment space, because it's all about people. And I, with my company, get a chance to not only provide opportunities for the people that work for me, we are able, with our service, to help companies grow and hire the talent that they're looking for. So we're not only delivering a lot of value on the client side, but also we're delivering a lot of value on the new employees that are coming to these companies. And that is something that's extremely rewarding, because 95% of the people, when they meet you, say, what's your name and what do you do? Right? It's such a key aspect of life, right? And to be able to make a positive impact on that is extremely rewarding to me. What about you, Rudy?
I think it's very similar. I mean, I'm really driven by a kind of a negative survey figure, which is unchanged since many years. I mean, I know this number now for 10, 15 years, and it's nearly unchanged. And it's 53% of the people out there, they say that they're not really happy with the job they are doing. So, I mean, that is honestly, as job is lifetime. I mean, I think that's really spending lifetime in a bad manner. So, or could be spent better. And I love to deliver a small portion of hope to these people out there in helping them to find something which fits better to them. And I think that's driving me. And it really makes me proud if a single guy is then showing up and telling us, okay, I've now found a much better job. It fits much better to me. Or if a company calls us and tells us this is the best hire that we ever had, because of what reason. And I think what I really love is this complexity that is not a kind of an easy game, because probably it could be an easy game if it's driven just by salary. So we had a couple of years ago, we had the situation that you could really catch developers quite simple with just paying them a lot of money. So this was a kind of a easy game. This has now changed. I think inclusion is very important. Diversity has become very important. I think stability has become an issue with a crisis out there. So I think there's a lot of different kind of motivations and a lot of different kind of anchor points that you need to find. And I mean, I think the challenge for companies. They need to really talk to the individual. They have to go down on the eye level with every single individual out there, and to attract them and to find them and to win them. And I think that is challenging, but I really love this kind of challenge because it makes the game colorful and it makes it more complex. And that is what's driving me in the morning to stand up, brush my teeth, and come to the office. Yeah, that's my motivation.
Hey, and do you articulate this to your employees as well? Like, is this something that you constantly repeat, or like, is there some kind of like wider thing that people let themselves to?
Honestly, we're talking about this because honestly, I mean, at the end of the day, in sales, for example, just to take an example, I mean, we've got salespeople, they are young, and honestly, at the end of the day, they're selling something very similar to a job ad. At the end of the day, it's a kind of a job ad because that's the connection piece, the connecting piece where companies articulate what they're looking for and candidates get the kind of a description for themselves as well. But I think we are not selling job ads, because selling job ads is probably really boring after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or
Yeah.
4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a mechanism to help people and to help companies to find the right talents, and to help companies to help individuals find what they really love. And I think that is more or less what we do. We bring these two groups of people together, because companies for me is nothing else than a group of people. So, and I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like it's probably like dating in private life. Yeah? We are
Yeah.
trying to find the perfect match, and we are playing with emotions. We are playing with the lives. We're playing with the. That is what I really love. That it's a kind of it's human, yeah. And even if AI is supporting us in really big parts of our life, I think at the end of the day, it stays a human issue, and it stays a human. It will never lose this human touch, I think.
Yeah. 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 100%.
What are some of the most valuable leadership lessons that you have learned? I mean, you founded a company a couple of years ago. I mean, you are quite successful now. I mean, your reference list and your customer list, you mentioned some of them, but it's incredible. I've been at some of your events in Amsterdam, and I was really impressed by not only but the number of people showing up at your event. It's more this emotional bonding that you really feel if you enter the building. So it's not, people are not going there because the coffee is the best or probably they get nice snacks. It's more, it's like a family meeting that love to be there, they love to spend time with you and listen to all the great speakers there. So I really was impressed by that. And I think along this way, you probably had a lot of lessons. Could you share some of them? What was probably the biggest ones, the three biggest ones or two biggest ones?
One thing is that I've learned over time is that anything is possible. And I started my career at Unilever, and I was never in an entrepreneurial environment. I was in a corporate environment, was doing quite well, but it just wasn't for me. And I always had this idea, like I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't really know how. I had different ideas and I was thinking about it. And I even did some research of fresh baby food with a friend of mine. And we had some conversations with some of our friends that were dads, but we never were able to make that next step. And the reason was because we didn't know how. But more importantly, we didn't believe that we could. And the biggest thing that I've learned as an entrepreneur is that action beats everything. Just do and go. It's the biggest thing. The biggest thing. If people can take one lesson here, and you I know for sure that you will resonate with this. You can plan as much as you want. You can think about things as much as you want, but as long as you don't try, nothing will happen. And everything is always different than what you thought it would be, whether that's positive or negative. And you will only figure that out when you try. And now I've learned, having been an entrepreneur for like 9, 10 years of my career, is that I know for myself, which is very, very powerful, that if I set my mind to it and I focus on something, I can make it work. I can make it happen. But it's a muscle that I had to build, right? And let me give you a story on this. So when we started Matchr, both me and my co-founder Martin, we had no experience in the recruitment industry and we had no experience in the tech industry. Martin ran two really successful recruitment companies. One is in executive search and one was in legal. And I had been on the job board side of things, but neither one of us had ever used a paid version of LinkedIn. Neither one of us had ever worked in tech, and neither one of us had ever worked in the RPO space. We were as green as we could be. But we were super driven, and we had this utter belief we are going to be successful, right? So that was number one. And what we started doing is we just started having conversations with people in our network where we ask, "Hey, Rudi, what do you think? We're thinking about opening up an office in Ukraine where we train great sourcers and great recruiters that you can then hire remotely, that you can skill up and skill down based on your business needs." And again, right? Like we had never heard of RPO, recruitment process outsourcing, or BPO, or that these kind of like big service centers already existed. We thought we were quite unique in our approach because we just simply had it and learned from it. And this was literally just an idea on paper, but we already started having these conversations while we're also scoping out where we could set up our office in Ukraine, right? Like we're doing everything at the same time. And I remember sitting down with Maarten on the 1st of October. And I said, Maarten, we've been going at it for like 2 or 3 months. I said, Maarten, when do you think we can be live? Because, like this is my 100% focus. We also start to need making money at a certain point. And Maarten, being the strategy consultant that he is, he built a really nice spreadsheet with a detailed planning. He said 1st of January. I was looking at the planning. I thought 3 months, Jesus, that sounds long from now, right? Before we're going to be live. So I asked him, and I pushed him like, let's at least aim for 1st of December, right? Like I'm like really, bias driven. And I was like, that feels too long. And Maarten, being more of the realist between the two of us, was like, I mean, we can try, but like realistically, look at all the things that we need to do. 3 days later, we got an introduction call scheduled with the head of recruitment of Revolut at the time, super young guy. And they were going through their hyper growth at the time. They were hiring hundreds, if not thousands of people per year. And we originally thought this is just going to be like a nice, get to know each other call in terms of, hey, is this a model that could potentially work for Revolut in the future? But very quickly on in the call, we realized this guy wants to buy your service. So we kind of like were then, also like, shoulder straight and like pretending that we already had a running successful business. And 20 minutes into the call, we said, okay, great. This service, this is exactly what we need. When can you guys start? And at the time, we didn't have a legal entity. We didn't have an office. We had no one working for us. We didn't have a single employee contract. The only thing that we had was an ID and a company name. That was the only thing that we had. And based on his question and his urgency, without having to look at Maarten, I said 1st of December. And within a split second, he said 1st of December, way too late. I need you guys to be ready on the 20th of October because that's when I'm doing my next onboarding cycle, which was 14 days later from the moment that we had the call. Both Maarten and I stayed silent for a second and then said, no problem, we'll get it done. We hung up the phone. We were both dialing in Zoom. I got on my bike, bought a bottle of champagne, cycled to Maarten, brought in a bottle of champagne and said, Maarten, we got our first client, Revolut. Now, how the F are we going to like find and staff this client? But what we did, within 14 days, we bribed an attorney to set up our legal entity. I flew within 3 days to Ukraine without even telling my family and friends that I all of a sudden was living in Ukraine. We hired a bunch of freelancers that I had met during my due diligence of working in this industry. My old intern designer created a really nice looking proposal. And we used one of Maarten's former contracts of a client, and then we put our logo on, etc. And we now had a legal entity and sent it to them. Luckily, because their legal department was so overwhelmed, that was a delay of like 2 weeks that we needed also like for us to kind of like get up and running. But we made it, right? And the only reason why we made it is because we started talking to people. So that's a little bit of a longer story, but that's the power of doing things and just going for it.
I know parts of the story, and I'm still impressed. And what I really like most is the sparkling in your eyes if you tell the story, because that shows the passion and that shows the energy. And I think this is probably the success factor, is this kind of energy-driven approach, and also the braveness to not always get the kind of a security that it definitely will work out. And that is bringing me to my next question, because I mean, if I compare the European kind of failure culture, because honestly, you need a kind of a positive access to failure as well, because 100%. Otherwise 100%. You don't start planning. And I think that's the biggest issue that I see in the European markets at the moment, that there's the biggest issue that I definitely see, that we need always security first before we take decisions.
Yeah.
And I think, do you think that we have reached the necessary level of failure culture in Europe?
I think it can and should be cultivated much more, right? So I live in New York. I moved to New York 3 years ago, and the whole thought process around failure and opportunity and entrepreneurship is really different. And one of a really good examples, it's I have multiple really successful friends that have been fired in previous jobs. And it's actually really normal. Like I speak to people and it's like, yeah, I like really sucks. I got laid off last week by my company. And people are like, ah, sucks, man. And then they move on. Where in the Netherlands, if I'm really honest, I don't think I know anyone that's like in my personal circles that has ever been laid off. And if that would have been the case, there would have been a little bit of a stigma around it, right? Like, oh, this person's been laid off. Like, Jesus, what happened there, right? And of course, there's circumstances for it, etc. But it's such a stark difference between it's okay to be fired, it's okay to fail. You move on and you find your next opportunity. Because as you know, Rudy, entrepreneurship and leadership, the thing that what we're doing every single day, there's a new thing that we haven't encountered before. And with the best of our abilities, we try to solve with the information that we have. That's what it is, right? And we make so many mistakes, right? In terms of in terms of doing that. And it's such a powerful muscle and skill to have. And I love it because my coach asked me yesterday, and he said, what would Matchr look like if you couldn't fail? And ask yourself that question, whatever you do, right? Whoever's listening to this podcast, ask yourself that question. Where your career, where your family, or what it is, right? What would you do if you knew that you couldn't fail? And if I ask you that question, Rudy, what's the first thing that comes up? You don't have to have a perfect answer, but what's the first thing that comes up when you hear that question?
Honestly, I always have tried to act like this. And honestly, my career was always driven by two things. I think it was braveness and curiosity, probably in the other order. So it was more curiosity first, and then it was this kind of braveness, just to say, okay, everybody's cooking with water, let's try it. Yeah, let's give it a try. And I got some really job offers in my career where rationally everybody who has a normal, rational, trained mind would have forced you to say no. Yeah. Because rationally it was really impossible challenges. Yeah? And as you said, yeah, if you really want to find a way, you find a way. Yeah. It probably takes longer, it probably costs more money as initially thought, but there's always a solution. And that's also my experience. After 40 years now, I did 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs now in my career where rationally, honestly, and even if I talk to my wife, she said, why are you taking this challenge now? I mean, that's really crazy. Yeah, or it's even silly. Yeah, sometimes it was not only crazy, it was silly as well. But I really liked to find a solution, and in most of the cases, I found a solution. And honestly, I'm definitely not afraid of failing. Yeah, I think this is part of the game. You can't be agile without doing errors. I mean, it's trial and error. And I think there's no success without having troubles and issues. So I'm not afraid about it. And honestly, I'm in a way looking for it in the meantime because I love this kind of challenges. What is probably the one leadership lesson that you would have learned from a little bit earlier? So is there something where say, okay, if I would have got this kind of skill or knowledge or kind of accepted knowledge for yourself some years earlier, you would have probably avoided something?
Coming back to anything is possible, the confidence and self-belief in myself, right? If I could go back in time and knowing what I now know now, in terms of if you just go for it and put your heart and soul into it, good things will come, even if you fail, but like the lessons are there. If I would have learned it on a much younger age, I would have been in a even like I would have built a bigger company or like would have had more exits, right? Like whatever that might be, like whatever we want to put on there. But that's something that I wish I would have known earlier.
And as we have a lot of talented people out there in the market, and I'm extremely optimistic because I think we have well-trained, well-educated, and a lot of cool people out there in the labor market in in Europe as well as the rest of the world. What I sometimes miss is braveness, because I think people are really afraid of doing it wrong or don't getting it right, or being seen as a kind of a loser from some other people. What is your tip as a leader and as a manager and a successful manager to young people out there if they get this kind of challenges on their plates, if they are asked to solve something, to take bigger decisions? What is your tip?
I have a couple. One, power is proximity. Surround yourself with the people that you want to be. Surround yourself with the people that inspire you, and surround yourself with the people that push you forward. Because if you look at your closest friends, your 5 closest friends, and you look what everyone earns, and you take the average, you will be scarily close to that average. Did you know that your zip code is a better indication of your overall health than your DNA? It's crazy. This is research. This is 100% the case. It's 100% the case, right? So if you're ambitious, if you want to grow within your company, if you want to grow within your career, right? Go and reach out to the people one level above you, right? Have meetings with those people, build relationships there, like understand what they do. What did they do in their career to make that step? If you have an idea, you don't know how to start, ask the people that have already built a company and ask them, how did you do it? Right? What did you do? Get comfortable with that uncomfortableness. Use a mentor. So I've always had different mentors throughout my career. I work on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis with an executive coach, and it's extremely helpful because it allows someone that's not emotionally attached to me as a person to ask me the tough questions, to put me on my spot, to give me insights on my blind spots. I'm part of 2 different entrepreneurial groups. One is EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and every month I meet with the same 7 entrepreneurs, and we discuss intimately and deeply our biggest challenges, both personally and business-wise. And I'm learning so much because everyone's going through the same stuff, no matter what kind of business they're running. I bet you we can probably talk for hours on end on the same kind of problems, even though you have a completely different business model than I have. But what it is like to deal with employees, how do you deal with retention, how do you deal with culture, when do you give salary raises, how do you promote people? There's so many things that we can relate to. How do you deal with your work ethic, and when do you hire someone in, when you don't hire someone in, right? All of these things we can talk for hours on. So if you do that, surround yourself with the people that you want to become and that you want to go for. Find a mentor that is genuinely interested to provide value and time in you. Invest in yourself in terms of self-education. Pay for a coach, or find people that want to support you, and just do it.
I think that was a really cool closing word, and that I look at the recording watch, so we have already reached the end of this kind of Cappuccino with HR.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure having you with me. And Adriaan, everybody who wants to meet you in person, the best way is to come to Berlin from 9th to 11th of July this year, because
I'm really excited.
As mentioned already, Matchr is our co-host there. We are having a really cool lineup this year. We are having 3, 4, 5 stages. We are in the middle of the planning. There's an amazing lineup of speakers that we brought together, or we're bringing together to Berlin. So, we are both working on that. I'm really looking forward to that. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you very much for taking your time. And for the audience, please stay tuned. We will come up soon with a new episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rudi. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you for watching Cappuccino with HR. If you enjoy this kind of conversations, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Then you get all this kind of upfront information, new upcoming episodes, and all my nice guests. Cappuccino with HR is brought to you by We Are Developers, Europe's #1 developer community and a leading platform for connecting HR and companies together with developers. If you want to learn more, visit us on wearedevelopers.com. Thank you again for watching, and see you next time on Cappuccino with HR.